What's up, Christina? Welcome to Dad Edge. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'll share this with you. I've done just shy of 1,200 episodes in the past almost decade. And I think to date, maybe 30 female guests. So, I mean, not that I pigeonhole this to only interviewing men. It's just that's who tends to reach out to our team. And your team reached out, and I was like, oh, this is a hell yes for me.
Oh, I'm
Number
honored.
one, well, I'm a fan of you, but I love the topic. But here's the other really fascinating thing is that because our audience is obviously all men, it's the dad edge. Anytime we have a guest on who's a female, these guys really want to know.
Mm,
The downloads are always really, really high with female guests. And I think it's because men are, at least in my audience, I think they're really, really genuinely interested in the perspective of the woman. So I can't wait what we're going to talk about today.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. So let's do this. Let's start out with your childhood. So I know you're an immigrant to the States, Croatia, correct?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
So I would give us what your childhood was like growing up.
I mean, I thought it was normal. I think every child, no matter what they're going through, thinks their childhood is normal.
Yeah.
Um, but I grew up, we were pretty poor when I was little and very, very different culture from US. Actually, when I was a kid, Croatia was part of Yugoslavia. It was a communist country. And then when I was 12, a war started. And that was, shocking and something we had only seen in movies. But again, it's crazy how quickly a child it becomes normal for them, right? And so went through that. That was obviously traumatic. And then eventually, when I was 14, immigrated to the US. And my parents they were never like, oh, we're moving to the US and we're staying there. They were like, we're going there to stay safe. And then eventually we're all leaving and headed back. And I'm the only one that stayed. So yeah.
I mean, there. So what was it about wanting to stay here? Did you feel like I'm sure you had the feeling of normalcy growing up, right?
Yeah.
But then when you got here, what was the motivation to stay?
I mean, to be honest, at the time, I had just gotten into college and I was excited. And I don't know that I ever thought I will stay here forever, but sort of life happened. I got married really young, right out of college, had kids, and just end up staying. And now I kind of love the fact that I can go back all the time because I have family there, but I feel like I have sort of two homes. I feel like I have the best of both worlds, to be honest.
Yeah, that's really cool. And now siblings and all that good stuff growing up. What was the family dynamics like?
I'm the middle child, and I'm like the typical middle child who needed extra, extra attention. The whole, oh, well, she can have that because she's the oldest, and we're going to let her have the last cookie because she's the youngest. And it was like, no one was ever like, oh, well, she's the middlest. So
She's the middleist.
yeah. So I was as
Yeah.
hyper and loud as I could be in order to get attention. But here's what I learned at my whole childhood, every adult in my life was like, oh, you're so loud, you're so hyper, you're so this, you're too curious. And I realized that all these labels that are put on us as negative sometimes turn out to be our greatest strengths when we learn to use them wisely. Because now I make a living being too loud, too hyper, too blunt, too curious. So I think about that a lot with my kids when something annoys me. I'm like, oh man, that's actually their superpower.
Oh yeah.
I need to be careful. Yeah.
I have four boys. I have 16, I have 18, 16, 10, and 8. And my middleist, we've got the 10-year-old, we've got the 16-year-old. But my 16-year-old in particular, he is what we call the observant ninja because he
Mm,
sees and hears all, whether you think so or not, right? He's
yeah.
also like we also nickname him Priceline because he's like the chief negotiator of all the kids. Like he just wants to negotiate everything. And then there's my 10-year-old who's also in the middle, and he's like our comic relief. Like he's the comedian, and he takes full identity in that one. So it's really funny. Like the bookends, my
Yeah.
oldest, my youngest, they're kind of sort of similar people. It's really interesting. And then the middles are just like, wow, there's a lot of dynamic personality going on between you two. Like it just is what it
Yeah.
is. So it sounds like yours was the same.
Yeah, and funny you mentioned comedy because for me, my whole life, I always used comedy as just a way to get through stuff. In fact, in my first book, I wrote how for me, going through life without humor is like eating soup with a fork. Like you're going to miss out on so much good stuff. And even when I remember I was 12 years old when the war started, and my parents shipped me off to my grandparents who lived in a, safer area. And my grandfather has a heart attack in front of me. And I'm the one that has to call the, ambulance. It was like too much for a 12-year-old. And how did I deal with it? I wrote the funniest song. It would be considered so disrespectful and inappropriate about how there's bombs falling and my grandpa's in the hospital and I don't know if he's going to drop dead. And I mean, just such an inappropriate song. But I look back and I'm like, that's how my 12-year-old self dealt with all that trauma, is writing a funny song. So
So personal question then,
yeah.
everyday life, stress, things come your way and you're like, oh yeah, that's great. Like whatever it is, right? Do you normally handle like, your stress with some humor, or like maybe it's a knee jerk reaction. Now it's just a joke, or is this kind of like your coping mechanism?
I mean, it's interesting because what I used to do is everything was just, I would just find the funny, find the funny. It was almost like the distraction. And now, because I've been through a lot more crap, and I know we're going to talk about some of it today, and a lot more stress, I I don't use it as distraction because I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's healthy just like, oh, let's suppress the hard stuff and just make a joke about it. Now it's like eyes wide open. I'm seeing it. I'm going to work on it. I don't want to be blind to it. But at the same time, if I don't try to find a little funny in this, I'm going to lose my sanity. So now it's more like a tool I use to help me through it instead of just allow me to distract me through it, if that makes sense.
That
Distract,
makes,
distract me from it.
yeah. But it's probably, I mean, you've probably have trained yourself, over the years that perhaps like there's like this buffer. Like I think a lot of people, like when we're hit with something stressful, we automatically want to be like, oh shit. Right.
Yeah.
Like you just freak out. But
Yeah.
maybe for you, like one of the bumpers is like, oh, like, well, what's funny about this? Let me just kind of see.
Yeah. Well, it's weird too. And I just realized this recently. Um, when something is crazy bad, like really bad, I actually go into this mode of like, okay, and I will immediately find the funny. But if it's something little that's not even that bad, I like panic and freak out and I can't find the funny. And I don't know if that comes from the fact that I've been used to in my childhood. Like I know how to handle the big stuff. Like I've been through war and I've been through some abuse and I've been through a divorce, and single mom on food stamps. And now recently my son struggling with suicidal ideation. So I don't know if there's a part of me that's like, I can handle the big, big stuff, but the small annoyances that people would usually be like, whatever. Like, they say don't sweat the small stuff. I drench myself in the small stuff. Okay. I'm really good at panicking about the small stuff.
Yeah.
So weirdly, it's easier for me to find the humor in like the really bad stuff.
Yeah, and the big stuff. Well,
Yeah.
I relate to that though. Like not that I wish for really bad stuff. I don't like,
Yeah.
but my wife and I call the little things the death of a thousand cuts stresses, and they're just annoying as all get out. Like you're just like, seriously. Like, so like this morning, I woke up in my business checking account to a negative five-figure number in my checking account. And I was
Oh,
like, what in God's name happened? I paid my credit card twice. Paid the credit card twice,
look at
and
you being an overachiever. Amazing.
one was not on purpose. I can tell you. So I went and I paid it, and I totally forgot that I had set it up for automatic payments. So I literally, the phone call I was on right before we got on this call I was like, I have negative $35,000 in my checking account right now. And the guy's like, yeah, I see that. And I was like, yeah, I'm such a steward of making sure my credit's always in check. I just want to send you double the payment on my credit card. Like, and the guy just started laughing. He's just like, normally people are not this calm and cool when they see a negative balance like that. Well, I'm just figuring you guys are just going to return the second payment, right? He's like, yeah, within 48 to 72 hours. I'm like, okay, great. So don't spend anything or do anything for the next 3 days. Got it. All right, cool.
Hilarious.
So, well,
But
okay.
kind
So
of like, sorry, I
what's
was just
that?
gonna say, kind of like the paper cut, right? Paper cut is
Yeah.
such a small thing, but it's more annoying to me than if I full on like slice my finger and need a band-aid.
And it's a much better story. They're like, I almost lost my finger
Yeah.
versus like, oh, I have a little cut right here and It's
And it
just
ruined
annoying.
my whole day. Yeah.
Right. So, you have three kids, right?
Yes.
Oldest is 21, which blows my mind. You obviously started having kids when you were 12.
Yeah.
But, so oldest is 21. How old are the other two?
So I have a 19-year-old daughter who's in college, and then my youngest one is 10.
Okay, got it. And you've been married for 15 years.
Yeah. So the
Right.
first two are from a first marriage, and then I got remarried and divorced and remarried, and then I had my little one.
Got it. Well, okay. So personal question then. What did you learn from the first marriage that you took into the second marriage is like, oh, these are some pretty valuable lessons?
One would be to not make any big decisions with the most unhealed parts of myself, which I think a lot of us tend to do. And we do without realizing. And yeah, I think I allowed my insecurities to lead and ruled and, make decisions for my life, and had to realize, oh, my insecurities are not actually qualified for that job. So that was probably the biggest thing, is learning really, like, what am I making decisions in my life, whether it's who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, or how I'm going to react to the situation in a relationship, or how I'm going to treat someone or allow someone to treat me. Am I making this decision, making these decisions from the parts of myself that are actually still requiring a lot of healing, or from the healthiest parts of me?
That sounds like you have done a lot of self work in order for you to even say something like that, to even have that realization at the forefront of basically your consciousness. There had to have been a lot of work there.
I've been to so much therapy, dude. But also, I think, again, remember how earlier I said sometimes the labels that are put on us as negative tend to be our greatest strengths. I've always been a really curious person. And I think that's actually benefited me a lot, because I'm not just curious about, like, what's that person doing? What's going on in their life? I'm curious about, like, why am I feeling uncomfortable in this situation? Is it because it's a bad situation, or is it because it's a healthy situation and I'm not used to healthy? So I always tended to ask myself, like, why? Why am I thinking this? Why am I feeling this? Why does this feel weird? And I think that's helped a lot too.
Interesting. When can you give us an example of a decision that you made in the past that was based around probably the insecurities that you felt, or maybe the fear that you felt, or that part of you that maybe wasn't as equipped as you wanted it to be, for a decision?
Sure. So I I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without saying anything negative, but anyway. But I think in my childhood, I we all play a certain role, and I played a certain role in my family, and I was, thought of a certain way, especially by my father. And I think sometimes when we go through something negative or traumatic, and we don't even realize it's negative or traumatic, we sort of understand how to play that role, right? And so when I was getting ready to date and even marry, all I could see is, oh, I know where I fit in that. Not that it was the healthy thing, but I understand what puzzle piece I am in that big puzzle. I've played this part. I can do this. Instead of going, whoa, 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 whoa. Am I just continuing to choose to be, looked at and treated a certain way? And maybe that wasn't healthy. So I think that's been a big thing, is just going, oh, yep, I got this. This is familiar, which I think a lot of times we'll pick the familiar. Um, and familiar is more comfortable, even if it's unhealthy, right? So I would pick the familiar, which made me comfortable, instead of going, wait, I think I deserve better and more and different than this.
A lot of people just, quite frankly, they don't get there. I don't think. I think they keep falling into that same trap
Mhm.
of, oh, this is familiar, so I'm just gonna, follow suit, or this seems right to me, or like you said, this is familiar ground, so I can just go ahead and ease my way right into this.
Because
Even
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say my mom, she definitely did the best job I think that she possibly could when it came to relationships. But my mom was notorious for picking the same guy, like
Mm,
over and over and over. And it was always like a guy that I think she felt that she could help or save. And that was like familiar ground to her. And
yeah.
what I noticed, like the guys that treated my mom really well, like they usually didn't last too terribly long. And I don't think my mom was like out to, well, I'm not going to date this person. I think it was just her cues and like how she lived life and what she felt comfortable with and what she didn't. But I think that's, I mean, now that I'm older and now that we're all older, I mean, we can all look at our lives, our relationships, our decisions and all that and see some of those same breadcrumbs that you have.
Yeah. And when I started dating my current husband and he was opposite of everything I was used to in men, I didn't trust that. I was like, something's off. First of all, something's off. You are a liar. You're not actually this good of a person because that I've never been treated this way. So something fake's going on here. And eventually you're going to betray me or trick me. And I'm going to find out the truth. So that was my whole, attitude. And then also, I don't know what like again, the puzzle piece. I don't know what my piece is in this because I'm not used to this. I'm not used to being treated this way. This doesn't feel comfortable, which is crazy, right? Because it was healthy, it was good. And yet for me, it was like, I don't know how to play this part. I know how to play that part. I don't know how to play this part. And I'm so glad I stuck around and didn't, just go, bye. I'm going to go back to the stuff I'm used to because I have a great, amazing relationship now that, I can honestly say I've never, ever, ever been treated by a man the way my husband treats me. And I'm so glad that I have that in my lifetime. Like, how fortunate am I that I stayed open to that? Because I could have spent the rest of my life never knowing what that feels like.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that one. My wife and I have been together. We've been married for 21 years. She's the best person I know. And when I look at our relationship early on, because like, yeah, I grew up with, like I said, really, really chaotic in and out of fatherhood and father figures and all this other stuff. So I just assume like, well, every relationship has an end. That's really how relationships go. They all have an end. And
Mhm.
you treat each other really, really nice in the beginning. And then sooner or later you just don't anymore. And then it just goes away. And it was really weird. Like when I met my wife in college, I was like, man, this girl is beautiful. She's nice. She
Yeah.
treats me well. Like she's functional. She actually comes from a good family. We get along. Something's not right. Like
Yeah.
something's got to be wrong. And I, like my kids to this day, because I broke up with my wife 7 times in 7 years while we dated. And it became like this running joke, like, oh yeah, it's your annual breakup. Great. Yeah, I'll see you in a few weeks. Like, and my kids to this day are just like, Dad, like, the heck were you thinking? And I was like, I didn't know what I didn't know back then. Like
Yeah.
every single woman I ever dated was a goofball and we were so dysfunctional. So I thought that was the functional thing. So when I met your mom, I was like, I don't want to screw this one up and it's going to go away anyway. So I might as well be the one to make it go away because sooner or later this is not going to work and it's going to be bad. And I look back on that, thinking that, and I even explained that to my kids and they're just like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, yeah. And that's the way I thought like 20 years ago. So I'm glad I, grew up. So
So funny you say that because with my husband, I broke off our engagement. I can't remember now. It was 3 or 4 times. I think it was 4 times, but same thing. And I think it was a combination
three
of,
or four times.
yeah, engagement too. Poor guy. And I think part of it was, like I said, this is unfamiliar. And I think this must be fake because nobody treats me this way. And then the other part was like, he must not really know what I'm like. Like, he must not really realize how many flaws I have. He doesn't realize I'm not worth it. So it's like a combination of um, all these things that my insecurities were like, okay, this is what you deserve. And this is who he is. And again, just that reminder of like, you're not qualified for that job. I'm not going to let my insecurities make these decisions for me.
Well, you never like left them hanging at the altar though, right?
No, thank God. Oh my God. I would
All
still feel,
right.
no, thank God. No,
I'm sitting here picturing Adam Sandler and The Wedding Singer
no, no,
when, poor Robbie Hart up there and he was like, that information would have been great for me yesterday. So
no. And it was like 2 days later, I'd be like, okay, fine. Yeah, let's get married. And, I was so scared. I mean, I look back and
yeah,
I think,
same.
and I have 2 little kids. So there was more at stake.
Yeah.
And I was scared. I was petrified. When I got divorced, I was never going to get married again because obviously
Mhm.
all men suck. I mean, that was my attitude. I was like, well, I don't want to have the marriage my parents have, and I don't want to have the marriage I just left. So I guess I'll just be single for the rest of my life.
I think that's a pretty common thing though. Especially if the relationship really went sour and you're
Mm.
like, okay, yeah, not that again. and
Yep.
I think it makes people even more gun shy, regardless of even like the background we come from, or quote unquote, like how we're going to fit into this situation, that kind of thing with this other person. But it sounds like you at least figured it out as well as I did. Thank God. Otherwise we would probably be like, now what? But,
Yep.
but so uh,
Sorry, can I tell you a sweet story about my husband?
absolutely.
A dad
Absolutely.
story. You'll appreciate it. So, okay, so we're dating, and it took a long time before before I introduced him to my kids, because my kids were little when I left my marriage. They were 3 and a year and a half, and so eventually I started dating him. It takes a while before I introduced him. Even when I introduced him, it was as a friend. We didn't even hold hands in front of them. I was like, I'm not gonna drag some man in here, and then what if we break up and they get attached? Blah blah. Blah. Anyway, we get pretty serious. At this point, he's already telling me I want to marry you someday. I wake up in the middle of the night. My daughter is projectile vomiting. Okay. I think she was like 3 at this time. And then my son wakes up and he's just, screaming. And it's just one of those single mom moments where you feel like you're going to lose your freaking mind. And it's like 2 or 3 a.m. And I call up my boyfriend at the time. And he lived about 20 minutes away. And I said, so you think you want to marry a single mom? You think that's what you want? Come over right now. I didn't tell him what he was walking into. I just said, come over right now. And he freaking got out of bed and he drove 20 minutes and she showed up to my little apartment and he walks in and I'm like on all fours with this gross rag trying to get, vomited beans out of the carpet. And he walks up to me and he takes the rag out of my hands and he's like, go lay down, just go lay down. And he cleans it up and he gets my kids to bed and everything. And then I'll never forget, he just came over to me and kissed me on the forehead and he said, yes, I want all of this, all 3 of you. And it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, well, this is so weird that no one's ever treated me like this. And then what's beautiful about this story is just a few years ago, my daughter had like a stomach bug and I was in a meeting somewhere and I get home and my 17-year-old daughter at the time is like on the bathroom floor and who is there cleaning up her vomit once again, all these years later? My husband. I was like, oh my God, like not only what a beautiful way to show me, like all 3 of you matter to me so much. And I am here for the messy, awful stuff too. But then on top of that, I'm not just here because I want to impress you right now because I want to marry you. You know, 13, 14, 15 years into the marriage, I will still be the one to gladly clean up the vomit. So anyway, yeah, he's a good guy.
I mean, that is a knight in shining armor. I mean, granted, with a few spots of puke and stuff on him, but at the same time, yes, hold on to that guy,
I
Christina. Hold
know.
hold on to that guy.
I
That
am.
that is a good dude.
He
Wow,
is.
man. All right. Well, hey, I'm glad you stuck that out. I'm
Yeah, me
glad
too.
that even though it took like 4 times of like almost calling it off, I'm really glad you stuck it out.
Me too.
Because it sounds like you got a winner. So that's cool. Um, but let's talk about this killer book that you have. I Can Fix This, and all the other lies I've told myself while parenting my struggling child. Okay. So this, when your team reached out, and I know who you are, I was like, why does Christina want to come on the dad edge? And then
Mhm.
I saw this book and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like this is right up, our alley as parents, thinking that we have control over everything. And, we have shame, we have guilt. And when things go wrong, like we just can't let ourselves off the hook. And we forget that our children are completely separate human beings. And yes, we raise them and all this other stuff, but this minefield that
Mhm.
we, of raising kids, especially when they're going through their ebbs and flows, when they're going through their emotions or they're battling, demons of some kind. It's just like we have such a hard time guiding them through that because a lot of it has to do with, I think, the fact that we don't let ourselves off the hook as parents and we beat ourselves up relentlessly. So I would just love for you to just start out by sharing, you know, what was the launching pad for this book?
Well, I never thought I was going to write this book because I have this rule with my kids because of what I do. A lot of my stuff is out on social media, right? My videos, and I have a book out, I tour. And so any story I share, I have to have their full permission. I won't even share a family picture unless everybody's approved it. I've never said anything anywhere publicly about my kids without
That's
their
good, by the way. That's great. You
and
do that.
so, well, I think that's the reason they don't resent me for my job because otherwise I think they'd resent me. Um, and when my son started struggling at around 13, at 14 is the first time I asked him, have you ever thought about hurting himself? And he said, yes. And I was like, whoa, because I was the mom that thought I knew my son and it's just teenage hormones. And, I came from a place of assumption instead of coming from a place of curiosity. And then from then on, it was just this long road of, him being diagnosed with depression, anxiety. And at one point I had to call the police on him, and, he's taken in handcuffs to a psychiatric hospital, and then ends up in a residential center. And he ended up, his anger often showed up. His depression often showed up as anger and rage. He was punching holes in the wall. He started, stealing in order to get drugs to numb the depression. It was just like the craziest, most painful time. And I felt like an idiot. I felt like an idiot. I felt completely clueless. I was like, I don't know. I'm trying everything and nothing is working. And how do I save this kid? And then eventually, as things started to get better, it was actually, and he's very private. He's not even on social media. He said, Mom, what helped me the most was hearing from other kids, because kids hear from parents and they hear from teachers and they hear from therapists. But for a kid to hear from another kid, hey, this is what depression feels like, and this is how much it sucks, and just talk about it openly, is what helped him the most through these support groups he went through. So he decided to make this video with me, which you can find online. And even before we shot the video, he said, I don't want you to tell me what you're going to ask me. I don't want to plan anything. I just want to sit and have a blunt conversation. And he was so open in it. And that's actually what led to the book. And he writes the last chapter. He wrote the last chapter in the book. So you hear from a mom who's just trying to learn how to navigate this. And like the title says, trying to fix it, because I was convinced I can figure this out. I can fix this. And realizing I can't. And then you hear directly from the teen, and he's very blunt about what I did that didn't help and what I did that did help. And also very blunt about the fact that, there is no shame in talking about this openly. And I think especially for boys, sometimes, there's way too much pressure on boys and men to be the tough one and be the strong one. And I think that one of the most beautiful ways to show strength is vulnerability.
I would agree. But trying, to convince a teenager that is very, very hard, right? Especially when they want to be tough, they want to be resilient, they want to be, and plus, like, I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but I know, like, I'm just guessing here that we're somewhat around the same age, but social media, I think, has created an absolute monster with kids who already have mental
Yep.
health. Because all you have to do, like, I remember going to school, and it's like, to get away from the bullies or to get away from whatever, once I was home, I was
Yeah.
home. You didn't really, it was almost like the light switch had shut off, right? But now all you need is a device. All you need is a phone. And you can suddenly just fall right back into that comparison trap of, like, people are saying things to me online, or I'm seeing so and so, just like, oh, that kid just did this, this, and this. Oh, that kid got a 4.0, or that kid's captain of the football team, or whatever else. And I'm over here just not even sure, like, what the heck is even going on. And
Yeah.
I think that when our kids see that, and their brain is still, their brain is still developing, that's horrific. And that could be a recipe for disaster. I'm so curious. What were some of the things that he said? Because this conversation you had, of the things that you were doing that was helping him and the things that were working, what were the things that he was saying? Like, yeah, those things, they didn't help at all. I'm so
Mm.
curious what those are.
So a big thing, and I think every parent has fallen into this trap. I came from a place of fear. And
Oh
even if you're
yeah.
not saying to your kid, I'm worried about you, which I did, but even if you're not saying that, they can sense our fear. And the way he described it to me, and he wrote about it in his chapter, when a parent is coming from a place of fear, it's like glaring lights. Even my parents unsteady. Look at them. Look at the fear and unsteadiness they have. How am I supposed to be steady then? If my parent, the one who's in charge, right? The one who's supposed to be my model, my guide, is all shaken up. And so every time I came from a place of fear, that only made things worse for him, which is really hard, because how the hell do you not come from a place of fear when your kid's
Hey,
suicidal?
it's like your worst nightmare.
Yeah. And I think what helped me, and I write about this in the book, is I realized that every interaction I have with my child I can either control or connect. I cannot do both. You cannot do both. And when I decided to stop trying to fix him and control him, and instead focus more that control on me, like what unhealed parts am I bringing into parenting? What unhealed parts am I bringing into the situation? My own worries, my own insecurities, my own ego, right around this. Once I just focused that on me and instead was just thought, how can I connect with this child? It made a huge difference. Can I tell you a story? I don't know if this is, I don't know how much you want to go into like triggering stuff because this is about
I would
cutting.
love to. No,
Okay.
no, let's
So
talk about it.
so whenever he, I would find that he was doing drugs or something, I would just like freak out, panic, right? And through a lot of work, um, family therapy together with him, individual therapy, I learned again this whole idea. I realized I need to connect more than control. So this one day, this is years into our journey, I walk by him in the hall and I can see that his arms are bloody and that he had been cutting. And and a lot of parents who have kids who are struggling can relate to this. This is at a point where, wait, we're supposed to be doing better now. We're supposed to be doing, I thought things were getting better. And I see his bloody arms and everything inside me just wants to go, what are you doing? I thought you were better. What is happening? And instead I was like, nope, we're not doing that. I took a deep breath and I said, hey, can I meet you in your room and just help you clean that up? And he was like, okay. And again, inside I'm panicking, but outside I'm just like, slow your speech, don't panic. I get the Bactine and Band-Aids and I'm sitting next to him. He's sitting on the bed. And again, just like holding back all the control. And I'm cleaning his wounds. And I said, can you tell me what it felt like? Like, do you feel like it helped? Did it take away your depression? And he said, no. And I said, okay, so what do you think? Like next time, would you want to try the same thing or maybe try something else that might help? And we just had this beautiful, calm conversation where he didn't feel judged. He didn't feel attacked. He didn't feel like my mom's panicking, freaking out. I came from a place of curiosity. Hey, what did it feel like? And what do you need? And at the end of that, we just agreed that, next time you feel the need to numb, how about you call me or you call a therapist or you call a friend and let's figure out a different way. And he later told me, he's like, Mom, it just felt so good to be able to have a conversation where I didn't feel like I was ruining your life or bringing fear into your life or doing something that, you look down on. You just treated me like somebody you respected and you wanted to learn from me. What do I need? How did that feel? So there a lot of those moments when he looks back, he's like, that's what I needed then. Not, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Let's get you more help, which is what a lot of us parents do. Even if we're not saying those things, our energy shows it. So, and I still struggle with that. I struggle with it all the time because mental health is something that goes up and down and he still has bad days. And I have to just remember, stop trying to control the crap out of this because you actually have zero control, Kristina. And that's the thing that's hard. No kid has ever stopped doing drugs, for example, because mommy told him to. Our kids have to make decisions on their own to want to be healthy and to want to make good choices. And we have very little control. And that is one of the worst things to accept. And it's petrifying when your child is suicidal to realize that you actually have no control. But I think the biggest difference was just connecting. This is another thing he told me. Sorry, that's I think every parent should know. Actually, he didn't tell me this. I didn't realize this until I read his chapter. He wrote in his chapter how my mom would, check in on me and she would go, hey, do you need anything? I'm here. And I was the kind of kid that was like, leave me alone. Everybody leave me alone. I got this. I don't need anybody's help. Leave me alone. And he said, but with my mom ending every single conversation with, hey, I'm here. I'm here if you need anything. And I, of course, at the time was like, this is going over his head. He doesn't care. He's annoyed with me. He said, by her repeating it over and over, it was so instilled in my brain that when I hit that low point where I was really desperate, I knew I could come to her. So parents, don't stop saying those things. Even when your kids are pushing you away. And I was told to get the F out of his room. I mean, he was very verbally abusive when he was at his lowest. I thought all my words were in vain. And here the entire time, it was being instilled in his brain. And when he was at his lowest, he came to me. So keep saying those things to your kids.
When you were going through this, because I'm putting myself in your position, and the thing that's really on my mind as you're sharing this story is like, if I'm in your position, I would have to override that fear with some sort of logic. And I think in that moment that's got to be the hardest thing to do, because diving into the fear part of it and just trying to control it more and just be like, "Whoa, I don't know what's going on here. Let me just find you more help," or blah, 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 and panicking as a parent, you feel that if I'm not doing those things, I'm not doing enough. And the very thought of like pulling back a little bit and, like you said, approaching the conversation with more curiosity versus agenda and expectation, and it was all about connection and not control. Were you getting help on your end to basically help you override that fear system? So you're like, okay, like everything in me wants to react this way, but I can't. I have to respond in this way and I have to connect with him. Or was that just something that you learned going through this process with him?
I mean, the main thing was that I tried control out a lot of times. And when I realized it didn't work, I was like, let's try it again. Let's just test it out one more time to see if it'll work. And so I had plenty of years of looking back and going, that never benefited him. It never benefited me. All it led to was either explosion or isolation. It literally trying to control never gave us a positive result, ever. And so I had to just be realistic and go, okay, if I've tried something a million times and it just made things worse, then as much as I still want to be like, no, that's the right way to do it. And a lot of that is, as parents, and a lot of this is because of the way we were raised. As parents, we believe if we see a problem, a good parent is going to figure out a solution and they're going to go into go, go, go mode and they're going to fix it. And that's what a good parent does. And if you're not doing that, then you are passive, then you are lazy, then you are not giving it your all. And what I had to realize is that surrendering, and I used to think like if I just surrender and just try to connect, that's passive. That means giving up. And instead I had to realize, no, surrendering means opening up. I am open to you. I write in the book how I had to learn to stand in awe of his story. When we are controlling, we are the domineering person, right? We are the ones we are God. We're going to figure this out. But when you stand in awe of somebody else's story and come from a place of, I don't want to control you. I want you to teach me. Even like, I always thought how my job as a parent is to lead. I'm going to lead and my kids will follow. And I realized through the situation, no, my job is to walk alongside my child and say, I'm here to support you and guide you. But you know what? The only expert of being you is you. So who am I to tell you what this is the only right way and I'm going to control this? And that's when our relationship changed. And that's why we're so close now. And I think that also helped with his healing is me going, teach me, please, let me stand in awe of your story. Teach me.
You have me speechless. I'm not gonna lie. Just because the amount of strength that has to take for you to do that. Like even though I'm sure you've gotten tons of reps in, to be connecting and not controlling, but oh my God, it's hard.
Oh,
It's got to be the hardest thing ever.
I want to be completely honest. I still struggle with it. I think I
Oh
will
yeah.
struggle with it, when I'm 90. I think I don't think I will ever master it because, and to paint it in a nicer picture for parents, it comes from a good place, right? It
Oh
comes
yeah,
from
of
a place of
course.
I'm seeing my child in pain. And I of course I want to make it better. I love them more than anything. I mean, I kept thinking often, I wish I could trade places with him. Like I wish I could feel those suicidal thoughts so he didn't have to. I wish I could suffer so he didn't have to. Like we love our children more than anything. That's why we feel guilty, right? Because oh my gosh, I just want to get this right. I love them so much. And I'm not perfect. Don't shoot. And now I'm gonna beat myself up, right? Because I don't have all the answers. That's what we want to control. And so I still have to remind myself all the time, the best way to love him is to not try to fix it all, is to not. And again, I had parents who were like, there's a problem. We know all the answers. And there's something so freeing when you as a parent go, I don't have all the answers and I am going to screw up and I'm going to have to apologize to my kid a lot. And I'm not failing any of those times. I'm not actually failing. I'm learning. And why beat myself up for wanting to learn?
Can we talk about that shame piece that I think you're kind of alluding to? Because I think if we, as parents, when I say we, I'm talking parents, when we're not playing that control card or we're not playing that fix it card, or, and I love the fact that you even brought to the surface that when we're trying to control and we're trying to fix, it doesn't come from a place because we want to control. It comes from a place of like, I love you so much. And the thought of you not being here, the thought of like this going in a really bad direction is almost like me losing both of my legs. Like it's unimaginable of what life would be like without you. But I think that as parents, and because I mean, let's face it, I want to take a moment here and just honor the hell out of you for writing this book,
Thank
because this is the thing that we don't talk about, as you well know, as parents, even in like our most vulnerable, our most authentic relationships, there's so much shame that is associated with even talking about, hey, as a family or as a parent or as one of my kids, we're going through this right now. Because it's the fear of like your friends, your family, your relatives be like, oh, wow, well, you're a failure. Your kid's a failure too. There's
you.
so much of a stigma of shame and guilt. And it's almost like we don't even want to say it out loud,
Yeah,
when we're just by ourselves. But like one of the cool things that I think you've really done with this book is that it's helping with that
I
feeling
hope
of
so.
shame.
I hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
I keep saying this, and I've heard it from other people who have lost their kids or their spouses. Shame is the thing that is actually killing our children. Shame is the thing that if we could somehow get rid of shame, there would be so many people here that have chosen to not be here anymore, because mental health is hard. It's so hard on its own. But now you're adding shame to something people literally have no control over. I mean, you know, we don't feel shame when we have a headache. I have thyroid issues. I don't feel shame for that. Why should I feel shame if I have depression or if I'm bipolar or, whatever the diagnosis is? And so, and also, unfortunately, depression shows up in different ways. And my son writes in his chapter how, yeah, I feel shame, or I felt shame. He's forgiven himself since, and he's really big on, I'm going to hold myself accountable, but I'm not going to beat myself up. Those are two different things, right? Um, he's like, I have felt shame for the way I treated my mom, for the things I did, for the laws I broke when I was struggling. But I do not feel any shame for my depression. Zero, because that is not a choice I made. That is just a part of my story. And why feel shame for it? And I'll share with you a quick story. So, first of all, when I had to call the police on my son, we were new to the neighborhood, and the police is taking him out. He's in handcuffs, and there's two people across the street. And I don't know them, but they're neighbors, and they're just whispering. And I literally, was the first time I said this, and I used it ever since. I just thought, no, thank you. Because everything in me was like, and I grew up with, what will people think? What will people think? Right. So everything was, oh my gosh, what do they think of us? We just moved here and they don't know why he's being taken. And maybe they think he, is going to prison and blah, blah. And I just said, no, thank you. And I started just saying that to myself every time I was like, who's judging me and who's judging him? No, thank you. Just no, thank you. I'm not picking up that freaking suitcase, because that's going to distract me from what really matters. And quick story, my son did not graduate high school with his class because he had been hospitalized and, residential centers and all that. So anyway, right before graduation, I'm at Trader Joe's parking lot, and I run into this mom who, her son and my son were friends in elementary school, and I hadn't seen her in years. And we run into each other and we're catching up. She goes, oh my gosh, can you believe our boys are graduating this year? The time went by so fast. And what are you doing for graduation? Are you going to have like a big party, or, we're trying to figure out what to do. And everything in me just wanted to give her a vague, I don't know, we haven't figured it out yet. And instead, I just decided to face that moment with ease and truth. And I said, Luca is not graduating. And she immediately went, oh, gosh, she looked embarrassed, whether for herself for asking or for me. And I said, no, 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 no. It's okay. He focused on his mental health. He's prioritizing that, and that's fine. And that moment was so powerful for me, because I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, that didn't destroy me. like the world didn't end because I admitted this truth about my family. And B, it made me realize I'm actually very much okay with our authentic story. I'm very much at peace with it. And it felt so good to get in the car afterwards and not have that awkward, like, oh, I just wanted to avoid that situation. Just go, no, this is our story. This is it. And then 5 months later, when my son graduated, finished his coursework, it was like a random day in October, I surprised him with a graduation ceremony because he was never going to have one. And I ordered him a cap and gown online. And I set up chairs in our living room and invited a bunch of people. And I made a program, and we made him the valedictorian because he was the only kid graduating that day. So that automatically made him valedictorian. And we celebrated because what I decided when I was talking to that mom is not only do I not feel shame, and I hope my son never feels shame about not graduating on time. And by the way, he did graduate on time. He graduated on his time. But on top of that, I want him to know that his timeline is celebrated, that he should never feel embarrassed for the fact that he didn't graduate with his class. This is his moment. And we just made a big freaking deal about it. And I think about how often we miss out on acknowledging and celebrating these beautiful moments in life because it doesn't fit whatever the world thinks it should or whatever somebody else's timeline is. So yeah, I'm doing everything in my power to just somehow eliminate the shame around all of that.
We'll get on you for that. Um, this is a lucky young man to have
Mm.
you in his life. And I'm sure he's got his entire family behind him as well. I'm so curious. Number one, I want to comment on that conversation you had with um the other mom. I heard a quote that once you cast a spotlight on something that could be deemed as shameful, you actually take its power away. You know,
Mm.
it's when shame lives in the shadows is when it's the most powerful, when it has the tightest grip on us.
Yep.
And even as you shared that story, like watching how you told it, your body language, the tone in your voice, it was almost like you kind of you saw you step out of that shadow and like this is what's going on.
Yeah.
This is part of our story. This is part of our journey. This is what's happening. And there was a certain amount of releasing that shame, but also empowering that
Mhm.
came across as you shared that story, which I think is a really strong reminder for us as parents, like to be okay with stepping out of that shame. I think the other thing too is, and I'm sure you've probably experienced this, Christina, is that the more you step out of that shame and you're bold with your story, I can only imagine the contagious like courage that you give other parents to be like, now they're going to share their story with you. So
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how many times it's probably happened to you that you might have shared something that you could have been ashamed of. And then all of a sudden somebody else you're talking to laid a story on you. You're like, wow, I didn't expect that.
Yeah. So I'm on tour currently, and I know I even can see it in the audience when I do my show, and I'll say something that I know people don't usually say out loud, but might be going through. And it's just like their faces change. And a lot of times they start crying. And then later, if they're in the meet and greet, they'll even tell me, like, oh my gosh, I've never heard somebody just say it so comfortably out loud. But I think it's so, first of all, it's so, my life is so much easier and more healthy now that I'm not worried about anybody's judgment, and this is it. This is my story. Take it or leave it. The way my son says, somebody asked him, what if people judge you? And he always says, well, that's on them. That's on that. This is who I am. And so not only is it freeing for me, but you're right. It gives other people permission. It lets other people know, oh, wait, I don't have to worry about other people's approval. I don't have to compare and compete. I get to just live my authentic story, and I get to be okay with my kids living their authentic story. There is such freedom in that. It literally felt like somebody removed a heavy backpack off my back when I started going, this is our truth. And it may look very different from your truth. And if you have a problem with it, that's on you. That's a thing you need to work through. But that's not a thing I have to work through. In fact, when my son and I did that video that I mentioned before, where the first time he opened up about his mental health, most of the comments were super positive. And then there were a few people, and he was 18 when he did the video. There were a few people that commented and said, why would you do that to your kid? Why would you allow him to talk about something so personal, so private, so publicly? And they just went on and on. And my response was, you are the one that's adding shame to this. We don't have shame about it. And by the way, if my kid had opened up about having cancer, nobody would say, oh, why are you allowing to talk about it so openly? No, they'd start a fundraiser and send us money for him, right? But because it was depression and anxiety. Oh, and so, if anybody else has a problem with it, or even that mom, I don't know what she thought after I told her my son's not graduating, but that's a her thing. If she's adding shame to that, that's a her thing. I'm not adding shame to it. I don't feel shame about it. My son doesn't feel shame about it.
I love the fact that, I mean, I agree with you with people that put comments like that in comment section. It says more about them than it does about your situation. It is
Absolutely.
that they're battling something most likely.
And you know what?
Um,
Someone sent me a private message once after I shared something and said, it really irked me. That video you made, it wasn't the video with my son or something else. It really irked me. And I couldn't figure out why. And then I thought about it and I realized I'm jealous. I'm jealous that I don't have the guts to tell my full truth. I'm jealous that every day I wake up, I feel like I have to fake and hide the parts of myself that I find ugly or I think are shameful. And I thought that's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. And I think a lot of people who attack other people, whether on social media or mom shame in person or whatever, I think a lot of it comes from jealousy. How come you're comfortable talking about that and I'm not?
I agree. And I think the other thing too, that's such a stigma, like you said, it could be anything else. It could be cancer, it could be something, right? But
Yeah.
it's if for some reason there's this stigma around anxiety and depression. And I just kind of like I wonder what that is. Like, so for instance, I went through I I've never had a history myself of mental health issues, despite what my wife would probably tell you. She'd probably be like, no, you're absolutely crazy sometimes. But no, all kidding aside, but I did. I went through a couple months of horrific depression, anxiety due to sleep deprivation. And long story short, I went through like this horrific 33 days of hardly any sleep. I was training for like an ultra event and just trained myself into the ground and couldn't sleep. Like literally just overloaded my central nervous system. And that went on for like 33 days. And I was sleeping on average hour and a half. Lucky, like really, if I got really lucky, I'd get 3 hours. And I was going to see a counselor and I was trying to figure it out. And I was diagnosed after the whole thing with PTSD because
Mhm.
like I lost. I mean, it was bad. I lost like 25 pounds.
Wow.
I could not function. I went to go see a counselor or actually a psychiatrist who is giving me prescriptions, and I'm like, I'm not taking this. I was like, I don't have anxiety. I don't have depression. Like, I'm not taking this. And the psychiatrist looked at me. He goes, you might not have had a history of it, but you're going through a season of it right now, and you have it whether you like it or not. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't. And
Hmm.
he's like, and he just kind of like shook his head, and he's just like, if I told you you had diabetes, you like, and you had type 1 diabetes, like you have no control over it and you need medication for it, would you fight me on it? I'm like, no. He goes, this is the same thing.
Yeah.
He goes, but whether you accept it or not, this is the same thing. And I'm like, and with everything I can muster, I'm like, all right, I will take medication for a season. And I did. I think I took it for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And but it took that to click in my mind of like, well, wait a second, why am I viewing this as something that, I mean, if God forbid I got cancer, I wouldn't view that the same way as I do
Yeah.
this. But like, and he says he fights that battle all the time with his patients.
Because we have been brainwashed, and I'm hoping that this is changing, that mental health struggles are a weakness, and
Right.
also that it's something you can control. One of the things that annoys me the most, what do you have to be depressed about? Look at how great your life is. You have so much to be grateful for. That's not how depression works. Okay. And so I think we sort of take it as our own, like something's wrong with us. Whereas if you have, you get diagnosed with diabetes, you're like, oh, that sucks. But yeah, how can I get better? We carry this like blame and we're weak and nobody can know. And my God, like that's got to end. That has to end.
I agree. It's the stigma around it. Well, as we wrap up here, what I really love to do is, if you were to give just an overall arching message to parents out there who are raising incredible kids who have anxiety, depression, they're battling mental health issues in some way, shape, or form. What would be just your final thoughts, final words of advice to parents?
The fact that you can't fix it and the fact that you second guess yourself all the time and you don't have all the answers does not make you inadequate. It makes you human. It makes you human. And by the way, it would be weird if you actually had all the answers. Like that would concern me. If you actually thought you had all the answers, that's not normal. What's normal is not knowing. And I hope that every parent going through this can somehow just not beat themselves up. And trying to control it is what caused my self-abuse. Because if you think you can control something, then when things don't work out, well, it's all your fault, right? So that would probably be the number one thing. And never, ever, ever throughout this time feel guilty taking care of the most important person in your life. I mean, sorry, most important person in your child's life, which is you. I have a chapter, each chapter in my book is a lie, and one is good parents are selfless. And I lived, when my son was struggling, I thought, okay, I can fully live my life when he can fully live my life. I will feel full joy once he feels full joy. And then I realized that's a hell of a lot of pressure to put on somebody. I cannot wait till the outcome is perfect and he's great before I start taking care of myself. Because the definition of selfless, one who has no concern for self. And how is a parent supposed to stay sane if they're constantly running around going, are you okay? Do you have everything you need? And never stopping to go, wait, am I okay? Do I have what I need? And what I realize is not only do I need to take care of myself throughout it all to stay sane, I need to take care of myself through it all to model to him that it's okay. Because my mom never showed me that. And so I grew up thinking, I grew up with this selfless mom and selfless grandmother, and, I need to just power through instead of going, oh, I had a really great example of somebody who really, really was kind to themselves and took time out to really focus on their own sanity. So I guess to wrap all that up, it's the same message. Just be really good to yourself. I have this rule I came up with when my son was struggling. The harder the day, the kinder I have to be to myself. So if I woke up and I was like, oh, it's going to be a hard one, I would go, okay, today, Kristina, all just grace towards yourself, kindness. If you screw up, just go, of course, it's good. It's like treat yourself like you would your best friend. And it really helped me because when our kids are struggling, we become real cruel to ourselves. We become real cruel to ourselves.
Yeah, that self-care piece, I think, is something that cannot be overlooked, especially if you're going through something horrific. You almost have to put your own armor on. You got to put your own oxygen mask on in order to help breathe life into people that mean most to you. And
Do you have
yeah, I
time for a
agree
real,
with you.
do you have time for a real quick story?
Please. Yeah, I got all the time you need.
So my 40th birthday was coming up. And I am big on birthdays. I'm huge on birthdays. I celebrate my kids' half birthdays. Okay, with half a cake and we sing half of the happy birthday song. Big
No,
on
you
birthday.
do not.
Yes. And
Get out of here.
every other syllable just to complicate things. So it's like Anyway, we've done it since my first kid was 6 months old. So I'm very big on birthdays, but I'd never had a party for myself. And so my husband's like, your 40th is coming up. Let's throw a party. He rented a nice place, DJ, everything. Okay, that's supposed to be on a Friday. And then that's going to be followed up by girls' weekend. I'm going to go away with my friends. Tuesday before that Friday is when I had to call the police on my son. And he was
Oh my
taken in for
gosh.
psychiatric hold and then hospitalized. So I go to my husband, I go, okay, cancel everything. And he said, no, I think you should still go through with this. Nope. I call my mother-in-law. She's like, Kristina, if you don't go through with this party, what are you going to do instead? There's no visiting hours at the hospital on a Friday evening. And so reluctantly, I'm like, fine, I'll go through with this party. And I go through with this party and I feel like the worst mother ever. I am celebrating. I am dancing. And it felt really good to just dance and get all those emotions out. And then it felt really sucky and bad. And I felt so guilty. Months later, I am talking to a friend of mine. And I said, man, I still feel so guilty that I had that stupid party when my son was hospitalized and suicidal. Like, what kind of a mother does that? And my friend says, and my friend had struggled a lot with mental health. He said, when I was in high school, and I was depressed and I was struggling. Well, first he said, Kristina, you did him a favor. I was like, what? He said, when I was in high school and I was struggling, I was depressed, and I put my mom through a lot, a lot. If I knew that on top of everything else I put her through, she had canceled something she was really looking forward to, I would feel guilty to this day. By having that party, you removed yet another thing for Luca to feel guilty about, for Luca to feel like he took away from you for the rest of his life. And I was just mind blown. Like, what? And so years later, when Luca got better, I told him the story. And he was like, Mom, thank you so much for going through with that party. I literally would think about that for the rest of my life, how because of me, you canceled something you were really excited about. So parents, you are not doing your kid a favor when you're just like ultra focused on like, and letting them sort of dictate your whole schedule and how kind you are to yourselves. You're just adding another thing for them to have to feel bad about later. I mean, that was such an eye-opening thing for me. So yeah, you're doing your kids a favor by taking really, really, really good care of yourself.
Thank you for sharing that story. I never even thought of it that way until you said it was a friend of yours that pointed that out, that like he'd be carrying that around. And that's true. Like, but
And I
I can
never
also,
thought of it. I literally felt like the crappiest mom, like
well, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, we all would.
embarrassed that I would go through with this party. And then I realized, oh, wow, that party, I actually did my kid a favor. Crazy.
And yourself.
Definitely.
And
Yeah,
yourself.
I needed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did. And, but I can understand why that would make total sense to you in the beginning. But
Yeah.
then you know, thank goodness you got some good people in your life. You're like, nope, no, you're going to do this anyway. And here's why. Because we don't see that stuff when we're going through it. But somebody else who cares about us will point that stuff out.
And what were my
So,
options that evening? I was going to be at home. I couldn't visit him, right? That night. I was going to be at home crying, worrying, panicking. Is that the best thing to be for my son? Is that what he needed? Or I was going to be surrounded by people who adore me, who love me, who want to celebrate my life. That's what he needed. He needed that
yeah,
mom that was filled and that was loved so that she could give that to him then.
love that. I love that. Thank you so much for writing this book. Thank you for speaking out on this. Um, so many people needed to hear your message today, and I'm so glad our audience got to hear it. And I'm so glad I got to talk to you. So this was awesome.
Thanks so much for having me. And thanks for talking about these topics. A lot of people
Oh
avoid them.
yeah. No, you bet. You bet. I think it's important. Very important. Just if people want to connect with you, I know you have a large social media following, but if they want to get connected to you, and we'll have a link for the book and the show notes and all that, but what's the best way for them to just follow you and just get more information like this?
So I'm at Kristina with a K, last name Kuzmic on Instagram, Facebook, pretty much everywhere. Yeah, that's probably the best way.
All right. Well, that's easy enough. Well, guys, we're going to have all the links in the show notes for you. We'll have a link for Kristina's book as well as her Instagram. This was awesome. And if you feel so compelled, drop her a DM. Let her know you heard her on the Dad Edge, and just let her know what really resonated with you. I think she'd love to hear it, as well as I would too. So this was a tough topic and a good topic, and I'm so glad that you were the one, Kristina, that got to share it with us. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. Seriously.
You bet. You bet. Gentlemen, head on over to thedadedge.com forward slash 480 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com forward slash 480. Go out and live legendary. Take care.